it's Pam with 44 Marketplace and Creative Finishes by Pam, and I'm here on the Dixie Belle page again because do y'all remember what we did yesterday? We did day 1 of our kitchen makeover. This is day 2, and I hope everybody's as excited as I am today. We actually get to put on paint. We're going to kind of go back over what we did yesterday to catch everybody up that didn't see the live yesterday. We started off the day by using our White Lightning cleaner and 2 heaping tablespoons and a gallon of warm water, shake, 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 and then put it in a spray bottle. Spray, spray, spray. Once you get that wiped off, then you spray some water to rinse off any residue and you're good to go. And these are our products that we're using. We're using Dixie Belle drop cloth. That's the color of our paint. We're using Dixie Belle glaze. We're using gator hide for our top coat because it's our water repellent top coat. And in a kitchen, heaven knows we need that. And we also went over some of our troubleshooting things, our boss and our slick stick. I am going to answer some questions I got yesterday after the live. My apron is from the animal rescue site. Not only is it super cute, but the money that you spend on that site goes to feed homeless animals, rescues. So it's called, I think, the Greater Good, but if you look up animal rescue site, you'll see it. Also, I got a couple of messages about spray painting. I don't spray paint the doors and drawers. I spray Dixie Belle paint on the doors and drawers. So I just want to clarify that for everybody. All of the paint that I'm using is Dixie Belle drop cloth. And then I'll spray the gator hide as well on the doors and drawers. And we'll also use the glaze. We're going to go over actually applying paint today. If you guys look at our cabinets here, you'll see that we cleaned and we caulked. Several people wanting to see what it looks like where you caulk, and as luck would have it, I'm using my paintable white caulk that I showed you guys yesterday. Let me see what I did with it so I can show it to you. Well, there it is. This is what we used yesterday for our caulking, and there's a lot of caulking in this dark kitchen. And everybody wanted to see it before we painted it. So if you look down here on the panels, you can see there's a lot of caulk. And that just hides all those dark creases and crevices. And my husband Rick is filming for me today, and I want him to show you some of the taping and draping that we talked about yesterday. I'm serious about prep. Taping and draping protects everything below where you're painting, and it just makes things go a lot faster for you when you actually start putting on paint. Drop cloths on the floor, taping and draping all the countertops, and we did all of our caulking yesterday. So now everything is ready for us to actually put some paint on. I did have a couple of questions about the boss and the slick stick. So again, slick stick is not necessary when you do a kitchen, only if you're painting a very slick surface. And you put one coat on, let it dry for an hour, then put the second coat on and let it dry for 24 hours is what's recommended. Boss blocks odors and stains. So sometimes you will need that, and sometimes you may not need it on the whole kitchen, just on part of the kitchen. But Boss blocks odors and stains and bleed through. So this kitchen didn't require that, but I did want to go over it. And our Mr. bottles, somebody asked about these. They're $9.95 on the site if you're interested. Okay, so now we have got our panels, and as you can see, there's a lot of little details that have to be painted. I've got everything taped off underneath here because you don't want to get it on the base of their granite either. Somebody asked about rolling it, so we are going to paint some and we're going to roll some because I want you to see how it behaves. And you can see behind me that we did paint some of the rest of the kitchen yesterday.
Heather wants to know what an example of would be that would require Boss.
An example that requires Boss. I painted an oak kitchen, and when I did my test, when I painted the first cabinet door, and I did the entire finish, paint and gator hide, the tannins bled through on the door. so it made it kind of not drop cloth anymore. It was more of a yellowy brown color on the door. So I bossed all of the rest of the doors and I didn't have 1 minute's problem. So typically, a lot of times if you're painting a piece that's been in the house with a smoker, you can clean, but a lot of times nicotine cannot be cleaned out. So the best thing to do is not only to get rid of the smell, but to get rid of the bleed through that you'll have. Nicotine bleeds through kind of a yellowy brown color, and it's terrible. Mid-century mahogany, if you're painting a piece of furniture, mid-century mahogany bleeds terribly, especially if the shellac or whatever's been put over the top of it has some kind of break in it. It will bleed, all of your paint will be pink. Even dark colors you'll be able to see the bleed through. Questions? All right, so if there's no more questions right now, I'm going to show you. Typically what I do is I start with my corners and I paint out. You can do it however you want, but I start with my corners. And keep in mind, you're going light over dark, so your first coat is not going to be pretty, okay? Your first coat is not going to be pretty. Now, most of the time, I'll tell you, use as long a strokes as you can, because it just makes for a better finish. But when you're doing something like these little corbels, it's hard to have very long strokes. But where your paintbrush hits the side over here, you want to kind of smooth that out. You don't want to leave all those little brush strokes everywhere, because then you'll be able to see it when you do the rest of the painting. Another thing is, if you're going to roll a big place like this, you're going to want to cut it in first. So I'm going to have my back to you just a minute, but you're going to want to cut in these edges first so that you can roll the pieces. So the best thing to do is get you a nice angled brush, because it'll get in those corners really well. And you want to cut this in. This actually has raised panels. I don't know if you can tell from your view or not, but these panels in the center are raised panels. So when you roll, they're not going to go, you're not going to get it down into there with just a roller. The same thing when you're painting doors.
Robin wants to know if cherry typically bleeds through.
Cherry is hit or miss. Sometimes cherry bleeds and sometimes it doesn't. So I would definitely do a test on cherry, because the thing is, you could go ahead and use boss and you wouldn't have to worry about it. But you may be using product and time that's not necessary. So that's the thing you want to, that's why I recommend doing a test. Now keep in mind, even after I paint this, even though I've caulked, there may be little knot holes and stuff that will show up after this first coat of paint that I couldn't see before now, before I start putting my paint on. So even though it's been caulked, that doesn't mean we're home free. That just means we've got some caulk on here. Okay, now I don't know if you guys know very much about using rollers, but you want to make sure you get a good coat, and you want as long a stroke as you can put, and you want to avoid dragging it, because if you drag it, I'll show you. Roll it so that you get a good coat. Roll all the way to the edge, because if you drag, well, it's not going to drag for me. I got enough paint in mine. If you let your paint roller get too dry, it'll drag like that. It'll leave a smear, not a roll, and that's not what you're looking for. You definitely want to make sure you got enough paint on your roller that it rolls smoothly if you opt to roll. And again, we talked about it yesterday. You need to use a foam roller made for cabinets, because if you use a roller with a nap, you will end up with texture in your paint. Now, if you want texture, then use another roller. But if you're doing kitchen cabinets, odds are you probably don't want that. Okay.
Somebody's asking, do you usually have to do multiple coats or just one coat?
Typically, I do 2 coats of paint on my kitchen cabinets, and I do 2 to 3 coats of gator hide on the exterior doors. On the interior doors, I do 1 coat. But I will tell you, going light to dark, sometimes it will take 3 coats, because these cabinets are very, very, very dark. And as you can see, our taping and draping makes it so that it's very easy for me to run my brush right along the bottom. I don't have to be very careful or anything, because I've taped and draped. So this floor is protected so that when I'm actually painting, all I have to do is just get kind of close to the base floor. If I overshoot a little bit, then that quarter round, it doesn't matter because I've got a width of tape and then I've got the drop cloth on the outside of that. Because a lot of times you may pick your brush up, and when you pick your brush up, there may be a paint drip from it, especially if you use your mister bottle. And I was just thinking, I don't have my mister bottle over here.
You know, the drop cloth color is kind of, in contrast with the dark cabinet, is kind of overexposing the, it's kind of washing it out, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's really bright.
Touch the screen where the cabinet is and see if it'll focus.
Oh yeah, there, that looks better.
Okay. So,
Amateur cameraman here.
my husband got brought into service. My bestie could do it yesterday, and he is helping me today. So now, as you can see, this roll had less paint on it than this one, but it's really neither here nor there because it's got to have a second coat either way.
Robin wants to know what type of brush you're using.
This one is actually a Chalk Pro brush, but I have a surprise for you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to debut some new brushes that I am going to mess around with today so that I can give you guys an honest opinion on them, and you are going to get to see them tomorrow. So that way everybody can see. But now these are Chalk Pro Plush brushes, and I have to tell you, I've been using them for a few weeks, about a month and a half, and I am very pleased with them. Normally I use Klingons in my kitchen because I like synthetic when I'm painting the kitchen. And these are really good, but I like the angle because this kitchen has a lot of corners and a lot of detail, and if you don't have an angle brush, sometimes it's really hard to get into the corners. But if you have an angle brush, now this one's a 2-inch angle, they also make it in 1.5 inches.
Marilyn wants to know, is drop cloth a yellowish white or a white white?
It's a yellow, it's an off-white. It's the color of a painter's drop cloth. That's why it's called drop cloth.
There you go.
Fluff is our country white, and cotton is our white. But now drop cloth may look very white to you guys because we're putting it over some really dark cabinets. I mean,
And we got a lot of light coming in through some windows.
yeah, and you know, we showed the room yesterday. This whole room is of course empty, thus the echo, but it's all windows. So there's a lot of light coming in. Another thing to remember is when you do corners, if you go heavy in the corners, you'll end up with drips at the corners. So be very mindful when you're doing your corners. If you don't do it with an angled brush, I have found that if you do it with a straight brush, you will end up with drips in your corners sometimes. This is the one, this is a Klingon Shorty, and I do this for my kitchens a lot of times because it holds a lot of paint and it does a really good job. But I have found that when I do a lot of insets, like is here, I end up with some drips, and then you have to go back and pick those up and everything like that.
Gator hide is going to be your top coat, right?
Gator hide will be our top coat. And we do 2 to 3 coats of gator hide after we get our 2 coats of paint on. The refrigerator panels have 2 coats of paint. So if you look at the right side of the cabinets, you can see they have 1 coat and the refrigerator panel has 2 coats. And there's a very big difference. You can see from the first coat it looks kind of blotchy down here, splotchy kind of thing. And that's very common with light paint over dark, or dark paint over light. The first coat looks terrible, and a lot of times with new painters I'll get messages and they're like, oh, Miss Pam, my first coat looks terrible. It happens to everybody. You can see this one, it looks like, wow.
And what's the drying time between quotes?
The drying time between coats depends on the humidity. If you're in a climate-controlled house like this, probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe. And it depends on how thick a coat.
How much paint on a typical kitchen?
A typical kitchen, I would say 32 ounces of paint, maybe. Usually 32 ounces of paint covers 150 square feet, 2 coats. So you can do the math.
No primer.
No primer is needed. Nope. Nope, you can see. This is drop cloth paint. We cleaned and caulked yesterday and we did not use any primer. It's not necessary with Dixie Belle Paint. Nope. Paints up beautifully without a primer. And actually, Dixie Belle doesn't require a top coat, but you wouldn't want to put paint in a kitchen without a top coat. All right, questions?
And that was the last one about primer so far.
Okay. So now you can look, if you'll notice when I'm painting, you might see these little...
Somebody's asking about spraying water on your brush.
Yes, typically I do. I haven't gotten my Mr. Brush over here. If you'll notice when I'm painting across the bottom down here, you'll see some little indentations. Those are little knots because these are solid wood cabinets, and there's one right there that's going to be pretty deep. After my first coat of paint, I'll probably have to go back and putty those with the caulk, and once I caulk those holes, then we'll put my second coat of paint on. And keep in mind, with the caulk, I can't run my brush over it for 20 minutes, but if I were spraying like on the cabinets, you can put the caulk on and spray immediately.
Somebody wants to know the advantage of using Dixie Belle paint over regular cabinet paint.
Regular cabinet paint doesn't adhere to everything like Dixie Belle does. Dixie Belle adheres to just about everything. Metal, glass, fabric, whatever.
Water-based.
Yeah, it is water-based. There's no VOCs. I mean, you can see I'm not wearing a respirator, and we painted my daughter's furniture in her bedroom when she was 9 months pregnant because there's no volatile organic compounds.
Is the prep the same over painted cabinets as stained cabinets?
Yes, yes. Clean with Dixie Belle White Lightning. And most of the time you just clean with Dixie Belle White Lightning, rinse the residue, and that's it. You're ready to paint. Now sometimes if your cabinets have, this is the White Lightning, it's granular. But sometimes if your cabinets have a cracked finish or a loose finish or something like that, then you're going to need to sand that away because this is just paint. This is not going to heal all the ills. This will just paint over it. But if you don't have any cracked or loose finish, like these are just solid wood cabinets, no problem. Now, if you're painting laminate cabinets, you would probably be better off to start with the slick stick because sometimes laminate doesn't want anything to stick to it. Like kitchen counters. If you're painting your kitchen counters and you got laminate cabinets, I'd go slick stick all around. Questions?
Somebody asked about caulk again. It's just standard latex painter's caulk.
It's 20-minute dry. That caulk is what I use. I'll show you. It's Alex Fast Dry. Alex Fast Dry. Make sure you get paintable caulk. If you get caulk with silicone in it, it will not paint. Sometimes when you're redoing a kitchen, when they install the kitchen countertops, they use silicone. You'll have to go over that with painter's caulk on some of the joints, or you'll still be able to see the dark cabinets through it. Again, that's learned the hard way. Any questions? And you guys see where I caulked all of these little crevices.
No sanding before we painted.
No sanding.
Just cleaned.
Just clean, rinse away the residue, and paint.
And somebody wants to know what sprayer you use when you do the doors and drawer fronts, and does it take more paint when you spray?
It takes very little more paint, and it's so much faster and gives you so much better finish. I use an Earlex 5500 spray station, but now I do know that some people use a HomeRite sprayer from Amazon. I think they're about $65. And they've had great luck with that. So I will tell you that if you're thinking about doing your kitchen cabinets, you might want to look into that.
Somebody says the sound is bad, but we can't really control the sound. It's a big hollow house. There's nobody.
I'm sorry, there's no soft
kind of
goods
an
in
echo.
the house. There's no furniture. There's nothing to mute the sound. I apologize. We're working in a customer's location that is empty.
Do you paint the inside of the cabinet doors? No. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. When you
Yes.
open them, the inside of the cabinet door is painted.
The inside of the cabinet doors get 2 coats of paint and 1 coat of gator hide. But now, even if you glaze the cabinets, you don't glaze the inside of the cabinet doors because they're just there so that, you know, when you open the door, you can see it. Questions?
Somebody asked about an old 50s kitchen that has glossy, I'm sure it's probably oil-based
If it's oil-based,
enamel.
You can scuff it up a little with a sanding sponge and paint over it, or you can just go to slick stick. But I will tell you, some of those 1950s oil-based enamels, they're pretty slick. So you can either scuff it a little with a sanding sponge so that the paint will adhere well, or you can use the slick stick. Either way will make your paint work well.
Somebody says they have oak cabinets, but the inlays are faux, rolled up. I can't.
You can roll it back down.
Would you use slick stick on just the inlay or on the complete door?
It would be kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because if you don't use it on the whole thing, then you'll just have to make sure you get a nice layer of paint, because it could end up being different colors, because slick stick is white, and I don't know what color the rest of your cabinet is. If the rest of your cabinet is really dark like this and you put white on the inset, you could end up with a 2-tone finish if you don't get a good coat of paint on both pieces.
And Renee says she's coming in late and wants to know if you spray, why are you painting with a brush?
Because I can't spray in a customer's location. Spraying does have a certain amount of overspray, so I would have to tint the whole kitchen with plastic and everything, so I only spray the doors and drawers.
We remove all the doors and drawers and take them to our shop and spray them, and we hand brush or roll what's left.
We do all of everything attached to the wall.
Someone else is asking about slick stick and what is its purpose.
Slick stick helps your paint to adhere to slippery surfaces, thus the name, slick stick. It helps it to stick to slippery surfaces like glass, ceramic tile,
Laminate.
Formica, anything like that. Okay, well, you guys see how easily this goes on, and by the time we come back tomorrow at 11 a.m., hopefully we're going to have all of this with 2 coats of paint on it, and we're going to start applying gator hide. And I'm going to show you how we can either roll the gator hide, we can put it on with a brush, we can put it on with a sponge, whatever way you're more comfortable with. But again, thanks for watching. Check out your local Dixie Belle retailer, and